Meeting with the pledge. Please rise as you are able.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So that everyone knows that we were all present, I will ask for roll call, starting with
Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner Campbell, District 2.
Commissioner Mills, District 3.
Commissioner White, District 1.
Thank you. And also joining us is Administrator Treble. This is a chance for us to participate in a public way of understanding how the county discusses and works with the budget that we have every year. And this was enacted by our Minnesota legislature in 1988. Auditor Powers has presented a PowerPoint. I think he came up with that word to go along with his presentation. He has put together a really informative PowerPoint, and we'll have that presented here so you folks can see it, and I'll turn it over to Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep it brief so there's plenty of time for questions, and I don't mind questions as we go because you might have questions on your mind and you might not be able to remember them later. So just briefly, this is as the chair said, it's a required meeting under Minnesota statute, and it's a public meeting where the county proposed budget and levy is discussed, and the public is allowed time to speak. So the law requires that the treasurer deliver a notice of proposed taxes to each taxpayer, and the notice contains the amount of property taxes each taxing authority plans to collect in the following year. So just some basic information. There's various taxing authorities in the county, including the county, the school, the hospital, the city of Grand Marais. There's 3 towns, the EDA, something called ARDC, Arrowhead Regional Development Commission, that we're a part of, and the state of Minnesota also has a property tax that we collect. So almost 40% of all property taxes collected in Cook County are for entities other than the county. There are disadvantages of property taxes you're aware of. As a source of local funding, it's complex. It's a very complex system. There are unfunded state and federal mandates, and taxes often do not match the ability of the taxpayer to pay the taxes. But there are advantages. Local government is more responsive and accountable to the public, such as this meeting. Property taxes are a more stable, reliable source of revenue for local government than many other sources of revenue, such as sales tax. The purpose of this meeting is to review the county budget and levy. Valuation is a key factor in taxation, but there are board of review meetings in the spring of each year to review with taxpayers the value and classification of their properties. Those meetings are held in the spring, the next ones, of 2026, and those are for taxes payable in 2027.
One moment. Jana, we're on slide 5. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, we're on slide, 5. So now we're going to the comparison of 2025 and 2026, and I won't go through this, but it compares our total budgeted expenditures, our total levy, and our tax rate comparisons. And what if we had no levy increase, and what is the tax rate with that proposed increase? The next slide is just a few property tax notice tips. When you look at your notice, you'll see a county tax line, and you may have a friend who's not very far from you, and they have a very similar property, and you'll wonder, well, why is mine a little bit different than theirs? Because everybody has a fire district in Cook County. If you're in a town, it's paid through the town, or if you're in the city, it's paid through the city. But if you're outside of the town and the city, you have a local volunteer fire department. Each one of them has a slightly different rate, whether it's Colville, Maple Hill, Lutzen Extended Area, Grand Marais Extended Area, Gunflint Trail, et cetera. And that is on the county tax line. It's not a separate line. There's a state of Minnesota tax line. This is only, it's there on your statement, but it's only paid by commercial and seasonal recreation properties. So if you're a homestead, it would be zero. There are a couple of lines for school. This year, it does not include the impact of the referendum that was approved on November 4th. This is based on what was approved in September, and that process starts early, so there isn't time to include that in these notices. So you will see that as an additional cost for your school tax when you get your actual tax statement. Always a lot of questions for the special taxing district line. What is in that line? The major taxing authority in that line is the hospital, the North Shore Hospital District. They have a levy of $2,182,000 this year, a 15% increase. They're feeling the effects of some of those federal changes. The Economic Development Authority is also on that line. They did not have an increase. They had a slight decrease. Their levy is $512, proposed levy, $962. And then there's a small one for this Arrowhead Regional Development Commission that we are a part of. Small levy, $41,766. There's also a line called Fiscal Disparities, but that's only paid by commercial industrial properties. So it should be zero for homestead or most other properties.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you explain what the Grand Marais Extended District is?
So you have the city of Grand Marais, their boundaries, they have a fire department, but there's need for fire support outside of that. And so years and years ago, they worked with the county so that they cover that area out on County Road 7, out to the Cascade area. And then that extended area runs into the Lutzen extended area. So the town of Lutzen, they have a fire department that covers some of that area in between Lutzen and into that Cascade area and runs into the Grand Marais extended area. But those are still, unorganized territories. So those also appear on the county line. If you live in that area, if you live on County Road 7, you're going to get that Lutzen or Grand Marais Extended Fire District levy on your tax statement as part of your county tax.
What about to the east?
To the east, there's Colville and Hovland fire departments. So you would get those on your tax statement.
Or Old Shore Road.
Old Shore Road
to
is part of
Colville.
extended.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That
what I'm
gets-
asking
yeah.
about.
So the
Yeah,
so the
that's part of
extended
the,
goes until the Colville.
right.
Yeah.
It goes right up to Colville. Most of it's to the west, but yeah.
Thank you.
On the next slide, this is the county's actual proposed budget. This was approved on November 9th. And you can see funds on the left side, so the general fund, the highway fund, PHHS is Public Health Human Services, and down below, airport fund, the building fund, and then our bond funds with 2018 capital improvement bonds, the sales tax bonds that are totally paid for with the 1% local sales tax. Then we have C capital improvement bonds that we approved in 2024 for the some of the deferred maintenance on county buildings. And then the 2025 jail bonds went into effect. We issued those this year, and so the payment will start in 2026. So that's on our levy. Last year, we had a capital reserve fund. We've been trying to have a capital reserve fund for several years. This year, we gave up on it for the time being and just included that levy in our building fund. we've had so much deferred maintenance on our buildings that we haven't been able to build a capital reserve yet. Hoping to start that soon. So at this time, you can see the levy at the bottom, 13,780,000 versus last year, 12,810,000 was our final levy. So that's a proposed increase of 7.57%. And on that right-hand column, you can see the increase by department. The general fund, you see a use of fund balance of 1,600,000. And if you did not have that in there, you would see a 7.13% increase for the general fund. That use of fund balance, most of that fund balance is in the general fund. So that's being used to reduce that levy impact. And that's just a proposed amount. The board will make a final decision on that in December. What's driving our budget? The next two slides tell you some of the things that are driving that budget. So we got the final decision on the USDA Forest Service reappraisal of the boundary waters. In 2025, we realized a 14.6% cut from our previous every 10-year appraisal. On top of that, there's a sequester of funds by the federal government of 5.7%. The result is an annual payment of $1,630,211 for the BWCA lands. And this compares to the $2,025,000 payment for the previous every 10-year appraisal period. So we've taken a considerable cut from that period. Started in 2008. We were getting $2 million. We got that for a few years before the sequester came. That came because of the Great Recession, where the federal government was cutting a lot of federal programs. And then the reappraisal cut it further. We fought the reappraisal that the Forest Service first proposed, which was a very drastic cut to about $1.275 million. They reappraised it again, with the final coming out at the $1,630,000. So it kind of cuts in the middle. Next item, we continue to benefit from interest rates on our money market and investment funds. They've been higher than our, let's say, our long-term average, 5.5% to 6% 3 years ago, and they've just slowly come down now. They're just around 4% right now, but we have benefited greatly in our fund balance with that interest rate. The other drivers, as in most years, are health insurance. As for most people, our health insurance increase was 11.8% for 2026. That follows last year at 9.95%. Some of the people in our region saw much larger increases. So as high as that is, we're glad that it's not even higher. Other drivers, the $6.2 million in solid waste revenue bonds that we issued this year to build a transfer station in Grand Marais and the two smaller facilities in Hovland and Tofte. The IRRB has contributed $2.5 million to the project, and we received an $800,000 grant from DEED, Department of Economic Development. The county bond cost is going to be paid with a solid waste fee assessed on all taxable parcels beginning in 2026. You don't see that on your truth and taxation statement. That's going to be a separate assessment that you'll find on your tax statement next March. The county also issued $6.4 million in a county jail bond in 2025 for additions and improvements to the law enforcement center. Those bonds are paid totally by the county's tax levy starting in 2026. it's in that proposed levy. Also, the costs of inflation were a factor in the county negotiating a 2.75% cost of living increase for employees for 2026. On the next slide is a history of the county's levy that I've kept track of since 1989. And you can see the great variations. You can see decreases as great as 12% in 1991, and you've seen increases in 1 year as great as 25%. We've also had 17%, 11%, 10% increases, and zeros and 1% increases during those years. And on the next slide, as a comparison, all of that averages out to about 4.39% a year. So we would be in the same place today as far as our levy if we were able to levy about 4.39% a year. So that's been one of our goals of the board, is to try to keep a stable levy and avoid all of those ups and downs. That can cause a lot of heartache for people when they see a 25% jump in their levy. On the next page, just some changes that went into effect in 2025, but just as a reminder, for homestead properties, the market value exclusion was increased. There's an exclusion of $38,000 for properties with a market value of $95,000. It's a very low number, but it is an increase. Prior to this, the exclusion was $30,000, and it peaked at $76,000. Back when this started, $76,000 was probably low compared to an average property, much closer than it is today. A $95,000 property is nowhere near what an average value property is in Cook County. So the help that the state was trying to provide 30 years ago with this market value, at that time it was a reduction, now it's an exclusion. A lot of that's been lost because the values of these properties have gone up, not just here but across the state, and yet the exclusion hasn't changed. They made this slight change in 2025. It does help. It's not nothing, but they don't keep up. Whatever that purpose was 30 years ago is largely been lost. The other thing that changed last year was the taconite homestead credit. That used to be $289, and they increased that to $515. And that's been a benefit to taxpayers, to homestead taxpayers. The next slide tells you who pays the property taxes by classification of properties. On the left side, you can see the class of properties. There's homestead, down below seasonal rec, residential properties, non-homestead residential, apartments, resorts, commercial, public utility, and way over on the right, you can see the percent of tax for proposed 2026. Homestead is proposed to pay about 22% of the taxes. Seasonal rec will pay about 36%. Non-homestead residential about 26%. And commercial properties just 8%. We have very little commercial, but this is why tourism, et cetera, you can see that in property taxes, how important it is for paying the taxes in the county, that seasonal rec pays 36%.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Are these all paying at the same rate, and it's just the valuation of that class of property?
There's class differences between different properties. For example, homestead has a class rate of 1%, and the non-homestead residential has a class rate of 1.25%. So excluding any other changes, you'd be paying 25% more with a non-homestead residential than a homestead. 1 versus 1.25, for example. Commercial pays even a higher rate. It's 1.5% for the first 150,000, and then it's a 2% classification, which means you're paying twice that you would for a 1% class rate for the same property.
Thank you.
Sure. On the next slide is just looking at all of those taxing authorities again, and looking way over on the right-hand side, there's your proposed levies by the city, the towns, the 3 towns, ARDC, the school district, the fire departments, the Economic Development Authority, the hospital district, and Cook County. And you can see the various increases, 4.97 proposed for the city. Tofte had a large increase for the town this year. You can see the hospital district at about 15% and the county at 7.57. Right below that, you see that all the local levies average about 5.9% property tax. Below that line, so you'll see all of these local levies add up in 2026 to $21,883,000. Below that, you see the state general property tax that seasonal and commercial properties pay. So the state is collecting another $1.66 million from our seasonal and commercial properties. And below that is fiscal disparities. That's a payment that we make to St. Louis County as the fiscal disparity administrator. Most of that money leaves Cook County and stays in St. Louis County primarily. They are the large recipient of the fiscal disparities program. We could spend all night talking about that, but we better not. But if you add all of those together and you get that final total taxes collected, $24,545,000, so the county levy is 56% of that, of all the levies collected and distributed. The next slide just says next steps. So the county has one more scheduled meeting on December 16th, at which they plan to discuss and potentially approve a final budget and levy. If they don't set it on December 16th, they would schedule a special meeting no later than December 30th to complete this requirement. We have made some adjustments to the proposed levy since this preliminary levy at 7.5% on September 9th. So it's down to 6.79%, and that's without any action of the county board. This is due to things like there were retirements, and the replacement person is going to come in at less, so we've budgeted that in. We got final numbers on our paid family leave costs, which are less. We got some of our health insurance increase costs, and we've added, a couple of departments added some revenue or cut a small cost, just as adjustments. So it would be slightly lower than 7.57 if we approved it exactly as the budget looks right now. So the board is discussing cutting expenses. We've done a lot of work with departments on looking at scenarios, even a 5%. What would a 5% cut look like? So every department has worked on that. The board is going to discuss that. And the board has also discussed using some of the remaining 1.849 of our BWCA reappraisal reserves. So we had set aside $2.157 million of our reappraisal because the federal government said we may have to pay that back. So anyway, the board made a decision last year that we would use that 2.157 to lower the levy. And right now, we have we used some of it last year. We have 1.8 million left. Right now in the proposal, we're using 1.6 million of that 1.8. One other thing, the board has to approve any increase to its own salary and per diem in December to take effect the next year. So they can't make any change to their, any increase to their salary without approving it prior to the next year. So anyway, they'll make that decision in December. And on the last slide, This is just a calendar that shows you about valuation primarily and the assessment process and why that takes so long. You can see the state's does sales studies, that we give them information from previous years, and the assessor sets the valuation for all of your properties on January 2nd of the year prior to the that going into effect for the next year's taxes. And then you can see all the way through where the meetings next spring happen in April and May, and that's for the 2027 taxes again. And I'm just going to stop there, and I think we can open it up to questions.
Okay, so, anyone would like to have their opinion and discuss? You're right there at the table with the microphone, and you have signed in already? Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes or so to express what you'd like to talk about.
I have nothing to discuss.
It's a lot of money. Every time I get a letter from Brady Powers, I make sure the defibrillator is charged.
Have you had to use it yet?
Pardon?
Have you had to use it yet?
Not yet.
Good,
not yet.
good.
It's
Yeah.
coming. I'm 80 now, so it just might be
Yeah.
pretty soon. But yeah, it's a lot of money. It's amazing, what everything costs today. And I'm aware of that because I still have a business and, you can't hold it down. I mean, the cost is just amazing today. So, but that's the problem. You always remember yesterday.
So you're still in business?
Still in
At 80?
business, and people ask me, well, John, when are you going to retire? And I said, well, when the last order comes in. Well, then what are you going to do with the business? Well, you put the for sale sign out in front, and you call the scrap man. So it's so simple, your exit plan.
I love it.
But, yeah, we've had this plate, I was going to bring along today, but I forgot it back there. I have a framed copy of Norman and Marie Mathisrud, my grandmother and uncle's tax statement from 1946. They had just bought the property. It was their first year of tax statement. The property, which was 5 acres, 300 feet on Lake Superior, was valued at $100. They paid $300 for it. They were in excess. And the taxes were $11. So when you look at that, that's 11%. I guess I'm doing pretty well here. But no, we got this notice, and we didn't know exactly what this was, if we could complain about taxes. But I said, I have been complaining about taxes up here for 20 years. But I said, I better go to a meeting sometime and see what all this is about. So this is refreshing to see all what you do up here. And it's tough to run a county. And thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
And it's not an excuse, but it's a reason sometimes that you see increases like, well, even 4%, probably it beats inflation over that time period. But if you go back and look at some of the funding that we received, if that funding, because we are so dependent on state and federal funds up here, if that doesn't keep up with inflation, if it doesn't increase, that gap is a levy increase. So that's not all the reason, but it's often a large part of it.
Well, it's a unique area because there really is very little business up here to provide that level of income. And in the Twin City area, you have all these things going on all the time, lots of people to tax. Up here, you don't. And I always said they need something up here that'll create some tax base. But what are you going to do? You don't get it from hunting and fishing.
No.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I'm just curious the extent to which cuts from the state and the federal government have impacted the county budget.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brady referenced the difference between what we get payment in lieu of taxes. If you look at, and this is referenced as to the amount of taxable land that we actually have and the amount, the percentage that is government land. And government recognizing at the point that it established payment in lieu of taxes, felt that there are costs associated with land management, and so therefore payment in lieu of taxes in good faith was supposed to support those counties in their budgets. And the amount that Brady referenced, that reduction is amounts to approximately just a little over 3% impact on our levy this year. So if you look at that figure in the reduction in what we got, that is not what had been proposed initially, which caused us to set money aside in case we had to pay back based upon what the assessment was. But that's one example where funding has reduced, which amounts to about 3% of our levy. If you look at the levy average, that is 4.39, that if we were to reduce at this point with the 6% levy, that reduction that we're looking at, that amounts to, every 1% of our levy amounts to about $129,000. So if you reduce the budget spending or you increase the revenue by $129,000, that'll affect the levy by 1 point. So if we were to reduce this budget by $400,000 approximately, that would bring us to our average 4.39. So when the board is looking at this, we're looking at trying to understand where our potential revenues, where pockets of money that we have that's designated for things that it can be spent, that those revenues can be used that don't impact levy, meaning taxpayer, but those monies can reduce the levy. So just in context, if we look at that average, if we reduce the proposed 2026 levy by $400,000, we would be at our average.
As far as the federal and state monies coming in, we're still bracing for a lot of depletion of some of the areas, especially public health and human services, our highway department, which depends on monies for roads and so forth. So we're still in the kind of awkward stage of we're not sure what's going to happen. So we've tried to be quite conservative in what we're acting on. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I think what you're getting at is what we hear in the news about state and federal, and to Commissioner Storley's point, the pain's going to happen in 2027 for that, is assuming the pain comes like the news is reporting. You know, a lot of things are in court and all that. So, but yeah, we're bracing and trying to be as conservative as we
And
can.
I assume those are also reflected in the increases in the hospital, the schools.
I can't speak to that.
The hospital said, when they sent the levy over, that was the main driver for their 15% increase. Because they're really dependent on a lot of that federal revenue, and they just have to be ready for it.
And especially, thank you, especially with Health and Human Services, we're monitoring, and we'll be doing assessments as we move forward once we have more information on what that impact will be to future budgets. But right now, like Commissioner Storley said, we're basically monitoring.
Thank you for the bad news.
Madam Chair, I do have a letter that is a comment that from a resident they would like to have read at this meeting. It was read at one of our previous meetings, but they requested that it be read again. This is from Paul Cole, who is in District 2, and he's referencing our discussion when Brady brought to the board our two options relative to the amount of reserve funds, that if we applied that towards the proposed budget, how it would affect levy. And so his comment is levy option 2, which results in a 7.57% increase. However, to reduce the levy to 7.57%, you are using $1.6 million of fund balance and $384,328. The remainder of the ARPA funds, which are the American Recovery Funds that came from COVID, that equals $1.984328 million. Adding $1.984328 to the proposed levy of $13,780,236 equals $15,764,564, which is equivalent to a levy increase of approximately 21%. So according to the 2024 audit, it looks like there is $3.965 million of fund balance over and above the 75% required, which is $1.6 million, is being used this year to reduce the levy. Is reference to the 75% required is it's recommended that a county, depending upon their budget and their needs, maintain a balance equivalent to about 75%. And it also is advantageous for us when it comes to looking for bonding money and negotiating a good rate. He goes on to say that the COVID money is gone and you are rapidly depleting the excess fund balance. The rate of growth of spending is not sustainable. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. Sincerely, Paul Cole.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I just wanted to add to some of the bad news that we've shared regarding reductions. And keep in mind, we've talked a little bit about federal reductions, but our state budget includes the reductions as well. And we have some programs here in Cook County that are impacted. Aquatic invasive species is one of them. Bowser, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, is impacted. So there are areas that over time are going to really be something that is going to change the face of Cook County, and we're going to have to figure out how we are going to either continue those programs or change those programs.
Any other any other comments from the public? Okay, anything else? Commissioner Mills?
Do we stay here until 7? Is this the meeting?
No, this is as long as, it just cannot end before 6.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express appreciation for people that show up. It would be nice to see more people show up. That's sort of on us to cultivate a climate in which people feel welcome and can participate in this budget process. The more that you know and the more that we know what you prioritize as values to you here in Cook County, it makes our position not necessarily any less challenging, but we know where those dollars should be directed. And I think the encouragement is to understand what it is the public values, why we choose to live here, and how we balance the benefits that we receive from the county with the cost and the expenses associated with those benefits. And when we can prioritize that, look at our mandated service that we have to provide and look at the services that we choose to provide because the public says we would like to see these things, that conversation, that dialogue needs to happen so that we can make decisions that are representative of what you value. And each year when it comes to looking at where we have less dollars to spend or more dollars, as we did with the recovery funds that came from COVID, those years give us opportunity to spend money where we maybe haven't hit it. But when that goes away, we have to look hard at the revenue side of things and the expense side of things. So very simply, 101 budgeting is identifying your mandated services, the cost for those services, the values that your community has, what we can afford to do with the limited funds that we have, and to demonstrate that we are aware of those things and try to be good stewards in a process in wrestling with the challenges that come with limited funds and increasing wants and needs. So thank you for your participation.
How many miles of road do you maintain in Cook County? That's what amazes me.
It's over 300.
300.
It's over 300, yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
should
just-
know that
it's-
number, but.
You go to some of these places, wow. And they plow this all winter, you know?
And our
Just
population is
amazing, yeah.
5,600.
Yeah, I'd like
Yeah.
to know how many miles per capita
I think it's right
Well,
around
let's-
300.
compared to, say, the Twin Cities.
That's right. Well, the Twin Cities, we're working very, very hard to embezzle as possibly as much money from Minnesota's programs as we can. So be aware there'll be more shortfalls in the
Oh,
future.
boy. Oh, watch out.
Yeah, just
Well,
want to
thank you, folks, thank you
point
for
out one
coming
thing.
this
on-
evening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to point out one thing on the American Rescue Plan funds and the COVID funds. So we have benefited, you know, our fund balance, we have used some. The Highway Department used some, we used some last year. We made some of our bond costs, but the majority of that has gone to housing, these new apartment buildings and fixing up apartments and keeping them going. So that was the majority of those funds, so.
And that's a good thing, in my view.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said, and that is a good thing, in my view.
Yeah.
I mean, it addressed a real need that people have been talking about for decades, and we've started to see real progress there, in my view.
There being no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I need to find that
Oh,
number.
I-
5,600 divided by 3.